Well, hey, my name is Ryan Earnhardt from CreativeSoundLab.tv, where audio recording is an art form. Well, today I want to do a Q&A episode. I've never had an episode to just cover a lot of the questions and then answer them. I'd like to highlight a few of the best questions, a few of the best comments, some of my favorites, and really just kind of take a few things a bit further. So let's get started. The first question has to do with reamping. I do a lot of reamping. I do a lot of vocal processing through reamping. This person says, what mic did you use for the reamp vocals? Usually I might grab like a Bear Dynamic 635A. It's an omnidirectional, so you can put it right up on the grill of the fabric. You don't have to worry about proximity effect, and it tends to round out the top end, so it's very mid-rangey. He says, where do you place it in proximity to the amp? Pretty close. Ever use any stomp box delays or for your reamp vocals? I typically don't have a ton of pedals here. It's usually amps. I'd like to invest in some pedals in the future, but yes, you could totally do it. Anytime you're going into the reamp territory, you're converting from a balanced signal to unbalanced that's high impedance. You can do anything guitar related. You can do guitar effects, all your pedals. And then if you want to go back in, you might not necessarily be using a mic to go back in if you're not going to the amp. So you need a way to get back in, just use a DI box. The next question is in regards to the how to record live in studio episode. He says, wouldn't it be better to use Gobos for separation in this type of arrangement? Yeah, totally. I mean, anytime you have, a bunch of people in a room, if you have Gobos or some sort of divider, it makes it easier. Now this episode, it really was about, okay, let's prove a point that it can totally be done, and that just by pointing mics in a certain way, pointing guitar amps in a certain way, you can actually make great recordings. So we have bass amp, guitar amp, some difficult things. Use Gobos if you have them, but for the most part, you can get a lot done with just pointing the mics and pointing the guitar amps in the direction they need to be. This person says, great video as always. Interesting that you won't use dynamic mics. Well, it's not that I won't use dynamic mics, but once again, it's a difficult situation. I was trying to prove a point here that even with sensitive condenser mics, you can make a great recording by how they're pointed. And a side note is that the bleed actually tends to be a lot nicer. So I've noticed that, like on toms, for example, using a condenser mic on toms, the bleed is pretty nice, and it can resemble a lot of almost the sound of the overheads in a way. So the bleed tends to be a little nicer coming into those mics. For the pop rock drum sound episode, this person says, hi Ryan, your videos are great, very helpful. I like the natural drum sound. Do you cut the tom bleed before mixing? Yeah, usually. I mean, I like to be really old school and try to do as minimal stuff on the back end. But usually what happens is I'll go in, I'll automate the mics off if the drummer rarely plays the toms. I'll go in, I'll cut the volume, unless the tom is being played, the mic is off. So I'll go in and draw little triangles and make sure that it sounds okay. So yeah, totally. That's something that I do quite a bit. It just helps makes the drum sound more polished. Usually the kick drum is the first thing to suffer every time you hit the kick. It has this weird sustain that goes away when you cut those toms and when you're only having them on when the drum is actually being hit. Here's a few questions on the Weathervane drum overhead episode. And these are actually really good questions. This episode here was actually tag teamed with Brian McTeer. He proofed the episode before it went out. He contacted me several months ago and said, hey, I want to arm you with the full technique. I heard you want to do a case study on it, and so let me give you that. It's changed actually a little bit in the past couple months. So he armed me with the technique, I reviewed it, I learned it, I practiced it, and he actually approved the episode before it got published. So keep that in mind, and he actually answered a lot of these questions below the episode. He was very present in answering questions. But here's kind of the most popular one is, are you sure that it shouldn't be more like the Recorderman? Otherwise, this 3-point string wouldn't make any sense because you aren't looking for the right distances. Pretty confused right now. I totally agree with you. That's kind of my point of featuring this technique, is you almost think it should be the Recorderman, because why aren't the mics equidistant from the snare or some other source? Why is this even working? So that's what makes this technique so unique. Brian actually answered this question himself, but you know, the gist of it, it's all covered in the episode. But there's this cool equilateral triangle, almost kind of like a decatree in a way, but it kind of hangs out and resembles the shapes and heights of the drums and kind of echoes kind of how the kit looks above. And it's a sum, so it's a sum of the distance between the kick and the snare, and you actually let the string roll on your finger. You don't pinch the string. So yeah, just check it out and have faith in the process. If you have your doubts, that's fine. I did for me, for sure. But go ahead and give it a try. It takes 15 minutes, and to be honest, I was really pleased with how it sounded. Next person asked, you definitely got the bottom type drum sound for this mic setup. I went from, oh, this is a typical rock drum pattern, to holy crap, that is beefy. So, you know, kudos. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a really cool sound. Like I said, I had my doubts. I was cussing and I was like, why am I even doing this? You know, this is just crazy. But when I pulled up the faders, I was actually pretty proud. So it was a really, really cool experience, from going like, this is not gonna work, to wow, this is actually working. So best advice is just try it, okay? Just try it. Next question is in regards to the secret weapons of my studio. This is a couple months back. Awesome video, Ryan. Any word on that transformer part number? Also, my guitarist is concerned about adverse effects using this on his JCM 2000 head. Any thoughts on possible issues? Well, I looked up the part number, and it basically is SEC 6.3-0-6.3V space 3A. So I'm sure that means something. My advice is, you know, I'm not responsible for if you mess something up or damage to yourself or your home or studio. Get a tech to help you build this, okay? I did, and I don't completely understand everything. Just be smart about this. Don't do this on your own. Get somebody that's qualified to build this for you. As far as thoughts on the guitar amp itself, it is going to cut your voltage, and so yeah, it could be adverse effects. Things are going to be running at a lower voltage mathematically all throughout the circuit. So if your tubes are, say, running at, 400 volts, well, now it might be a difference of, 50 volts or something. I know for my Lafayette LA75, my tech Brian said, yeah, your tubes are red plating and they're at like 450 volts, and with this box they drop down 100 volts on the plates. So I know it makes a difference, and he built that box for me, once again a qualified technician, to help save my the life of my tubes. Whether it does in the long run or not, I don't know, that's debatable, but definitely get a tech to help you out with that. Here's some just kind of general questions that I've gotten, just kind of some highlights. Not directly related to the video that he commented on, but your kick always sounds great. Any tips on how to get that sound? Well, a lot of times I've used a Beyerdynamic M88. It's known as like the Phil Collins vocal mic, but it's great for kick. It has a very good kind of high end. So you get the lows, you get the highs. It's a very well-rounded kind of mic, I think, for kick. It's definitely brighter sound than like the Beta 52 and the RE20. So it's a totally different sound. It's faster than the RE20. It is brighter than the RE20. So it's more neutral than, say, even like an MD421 on kick. So it's a very neutral mic. It takes EQ pretty well. And then lately I've been doing my whole like guitar combo thing, where I'm backing up a guitar amp and using it as a sub kick, plugging in that speaker, the 12-inch speaker, into a DI box and running that in. And so that's been my kick sound as of late. Next question. Man, I love these videos. Simple and to the point, cover so much ground. I know it's got to be time consuming editing all the videos, and yeah, it is. It takes me usually a day to 2 days a week to do these. But you've got it down. Thanks. Also, you're like the Bob Ross of professional audio, and with the tomato sauce metaphor, it's awesome. So this probably has got to be one of my favorite comments, being called Bob Ross of professional audio. Yeah, and to be honest, recording arts I think is a lot like cooking. So if I lost my hearing or lost my ability to do this, I think I could manifest the same things that I use here in something else. And so I can cook as an outlet, as a creative outlet. There's all sorts of parallels between cooking and between the creative arts of recording. Specifically, you have sugar, you have salt, you have bitters, you have savory things, all these flavors. Within the audio world, we have all sorts of frequencies. We have overdrive, we have clean, we have dirty, we have depth, right? So there's all these different metaphors, and especially recording live, it really is a stew of sound. We have different things combining, we have different things adding up. Sometimes our drum sound just isn't the drum mics, but it's actually part of the room mics, and then the room mics are also picking up the guitar sound as well. So the room mics aren't just a drum room sound, but they're also the guitar room sound as well. So yeah, it is really like cooking to me. And cook up some mixes, it's really all the same creatively. So anyways, those are some of my favorite comments of the past several months, several episodes really. If you have any other questions that you thought I should have covered in this episode, post them below. I'd love to see what you think of the show, any advice on what you think I should cover. I do have some episodes planned, but I'd love to see what your input is as well. I'll see you next week.